Welcome back, guys. In this episode, I've got another crazy piece of the puzzle. The 6-speed sequential transmission has arrived from the UK, and it is an incredible piece of hardware. I'm excited to give you guys a quick overview on it, tell you about what makes it cool, why I've chosen it, and why it costs even more than the engine did. It is an incredible piece. Once we cover that, I know you guys didn't think we were going to get through this without more episodes about control arms, did you? I mean, when I said complete at the bottom of the thumbnail in the last episode, you didn't think we were done? I didn't say we were done, did I? I might have. However, over the weekend, as I was looking at all of the parts and pieces that are going to make up the suspension, the brake package, the wheel package, and the tire package, I realized I wanted to make some changes for my own personal tastes. Everything would have worked just fine, but when you're spending all this time on something, sometimes just fine isn't quite good enough. So over the weekend, I started all over. I built my control arms again. I think I'm at like 25 of them, 26 of them. I don't even know. That's way too many to count on my fingers. But at this point, I know for a fact I'm not making any more changes to control arms until I drive the car. So what we have on the car at this point is where I have settled, and I'm happy with it. We are officially done with it, I think. All right, let's look at this transmission, and then we're going to talk suspension geometry. I think I say this every time a new part shows up, but this might just be the coolest one to show up yet. What we've got here is the Quaife QKE8J 6-speed sequential transmission. I've optioned it with a 4.357 final drive gear ratio and a Quaife ATB helical differential. I opted for this transmission because one, it's one of the only ones available that can handle this kind of power output from a K-series engine. And two, it's going to make for some insanely fast shifting because unlike the H-pattern manual transmission found in most sports cars, this one shifts in a single file line. And if you want to see one in action, here's a clip of a Subaru hill climb car. This is a dog ring engagement gearbox which doesn't use a clutch between shifts. All that's necessary is to unload the gearbox by letting off the throttle and simply rip the shifter to shift gears almost instantaneously. I also optioned this transmission with a series of sensors and load cells so that when I want to, I can convert it to be paddle shifted with pneumatic shifting, making for borderline the fastest shifting possible. Now, obviously, a transmission like this doesn't come cheap, so one of these will set you back $12,685. The transmission does come with its own shifter and a beautiful cast aluminum shifter base, and I've got Khalil here showing the shifting action, rowing the shifter back and forth. It's going to be a bummer to lose that gated shifter that's currently mounted in the Ferrari, but this is going to be a really cool item to replace it with. Although I can't use it for the final product, I mounted the Battlecraft shift knob onto this thing because it looks right at home and really completes the whole package. As far as why I can't run it, it's because of this, the load cell shift knob that might just be the most expensive shift knob ever at about $600. But what this will do is allow us to set up flat foot shifting by having the shifter be able to tell when I'm pushing or pulling on it and allowing the gear set to unload through the electronic throttle body. Now, while I can't use the Battlecraft shift knob, I do have the latest Battlecraft titanium lug nuts. And I had to show you guys these things because they couldn't possibly be any cooler. They're going to go well with the fact that we have our 5x114 re-drilled hubs all finished. All right, so with transmission stuff out of the way, we're going back to suspension. Surprise, surprise. And I want to take a minute to explain my thought process. So this is going to get a little bit wordy. I'm going to ramble on for a minute, so if you don't want to listen to it, skip ahead. I know some of you think I talk too much. I don't care. But I've put a lot of thinking into the last 24 hours. I spent about 12 hours straight yesterday measuring everything with respect to suspension and mounting points and plotting it in software and making small changes trying to figure out how to make this all work. Because the crossroads that I'm at right this moment is that I want to run these old Japanese wheels. They are split wheels, and the problem at hand is that I cannot get them to clear the brakes. It's not a high disc or a low disc center, whichever one it's supposed to be. And so, in order to have the hardware on the back of the wheel clear the brakes, I have to run a 1-inch spacer. Now, admittedly, it feels really stupid and frustrating to go through the effort of building completely custom suspension and then completely custom wheel sizing and specs, only to have to run a 1-inch spacer. But if I want these wheels on the car, it's a reality of it. They won't clear the caliper otherwise. They don't have much back pad on them. Now, adding a 1-inch spacer starts screwing stuff up. It really throws the scrub radius out of whack. It also means that we would have to run 1 inch less of lip on the wheel, or we'd have to shorten the control arms by 1 inch in order to have the same fitment. And once we start changing one thing, everything goes nuts. You know, if I want to shorten the control arms, well, now the roll center is messed up and the instant centers have moved and the camber curve changes, or I've got to redefine the Ackerman. I mean, it's just this one step throws everything out. Now, we could just run 1 inch less lip and run a higher offset wheel, but to be honest with you, I don't want that. The way the car looks is really important to me. I'm putting a lot of effort into that. I don't want to sacrifice performance in the name of making it look cool, but I certainly don't want to give up on making this thing look cool just because it's the easy way out. I could just run a high offset wheel. So with that in mind, I spent all day yesterday trying to figure out how to make everything work the way that I want it, considering the fact that I'm bound by certain hard constraints, mainly the fact that I want to use the factory suspension mounting points on the Ferrari. And so taking those points and making them work for me in terms of being able to run the size wheel that I want, the diameter, the width, the offset, to get the right travel, the camber curves, put the roll center where I want, it gets a bit tricky because some of the things I can't move. I'm not just creating a suspension from scratch. I'm doing it based off of something pre-existing. So it's been a really big challenge. The conclusion that I've come to, of course, as you guys might already guess, is I'm gonna do my control arms again. I think I can modify some of them to work, but I'm gonna have to rebuild a handful of them. But I think it's worth it. I think I can get the wheels to fit the way that I want to clear the brakes, to have the lip that I would like them to have, and to have the scrub radius work while having all of the geometry operate correctly, keeping the roll center where I want it to be, so on and so forth. So, we're gonna cut up some control arms, I guess. This weekend has resulted in a rapidly growing pile of rejected and chopped up control arms and an equally impressive stack of CAD drawing blueprints for me to make revisions from. All of the changes that I've made have gone through both CAD drawing and the suspension calculator to make sure that everything is, of course, going to work. That's the most important factor of any of this and why I have done this over and over again. Now, you've seen the process of making control arms. I don't know how many times. You could probably do this as well as I could at this point. So we'll shortcut this and I'll show you the end result of the weekend's work. I finally got the front hubs sitting exactly where I want them, and the largest change at the front end was to the lower control arm, to which I have added this kink in order to get more steering angle. Now, in order to actually correct the geometry and make it perfect, I'm gonna have to add some extended ball joints, but otherwise, it's all set up, and I'm really happy with the outcome. On paper, everything looks like it should work perfectly. The changes to the other 3 control arms on this side of the car are pretty unexciting. Just changes to the length and some movement for the geometry to work properly. Although on the rear knuckle, we're actually going to cut this upper ball joint stanchion and remove about 1/4 inch from it in order to actually get the camber curve to be correct. The end result of all these changes gets us a lot more room for the wheels, including the inch spacer that we're going to need to run for that brake clearance. And you can see here, we're going to be able to fit quite a bit of lip in the back, and the final dimensions should come out to about 17 by 10 and 17 by 12 with a +20 offset front and rear. And best of all, we'll get all that lip while maintaining a proper scrub radius. Now, real quick, before we're finished, I want to touch upon that 1-inch spacer that I mentioned, because I know some of you guys are going to be quite up in arms about the safety of it, and I'm here to tell you it's more than safe. Race cars of all kinds, including IMSA competition cars, run spacers, and the myth that they're not safe for track use is completely ridiculous. As mentioned before, this is simply something that we need to do in order to clear our brake calipers because our wheels just don't have enough back pad. On that note, guys, this episode is a wrap. I hope that you've enjoyed it. I know that it wasn't the most fabrication-centric episode, even though I got a bunch of fabrication done over the weekend. but I'm trying to focus on the fact that there's a lot more that goes into a build like this than just the cutting and the welding. I want to show my decision-making process and the figuring that goes into making a car like this a reality. So leave me some feedback and let me know what you thought about this one. I'm always trying to evolve and make this channel and this series grow in every regard. On the next episode on Thursday, we are going to take the engine and the transmission, stick them together, and drop them back into the car and make sure everything fits the way that we want it to, so we can start that next round of fabrication and getting this engine plumbed into place. So leave me that feedback, and I'll catch you guys on Thursday. Thanks as always for the support.